And again, it's my friends at SLY News. And I said on Twitter, on X rather, I must stop calling it Twitter. Did anyone else miss the warmest May and spring since 1884? Which is apparently what it was this year, by the way, folks. And I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure over this spring at several points, I actually had the heater on in order to actually avoid being too cold. And anyway, let's have a listen to what SLY News had to say for themselves on this very point.
Just a bit of breaking news we can bring you. Now, you may have thought that it's been a pretty miserable spring and summer so far, but according to the Met Office, the UK had its warmest May and spring in records dating back as far as 1884. So it's been the warmest May and the warmest spring since 1884, according to the Met Office. I guess they're not taking into account the rain.
So even... Just, can anyone remember Brexit 3 years ago, whenever it was? And we had I was out sunbathing in April. Have I been outdoors sunbathing in April and May this year? Absolutely not. This is nonsense. This is because they record all of their temperatures at airports and bloody military sites where it's madness.
Devon says it was such a warm May that we had the central heating on all month. Yes, that's a good point. And Mark says, I've got the heating on FFS, it's freezing. And I mean, even the SLY News presenter, which by the way, SLY News has its own daily climate change show just to really terrify us all into submission and you know, part with the Greta cult and be part of all of that. And she even has a laugh on her face when she says it. You know, they can tell that what they are saying to people is ludicrous. They can hear themselves saying it and think, hang on a minute, it was pissing down, I was cold, I don't recognise any of these stats. So this is clearly a nonsense. Eunice, what are they trying to do here? Is this part of a wider agenda to actually scare us? Oh, has Eunice disappeared? Yes, he has. Alex,
we might have lost him.
I'll ask you that question.
Yes, well, obviously they are. This is part of their, continuous agenda. We've talked about this earlier on, the sort of the global elite agenda that I said was going on with migration and other things. We know it's obviously happening with climate change because they keep on talking about net zero in every country, left to right in the West. And the only way they feel they can do that, as they have done with their campaigns against Brexit and all these other things, is to try and scare us, project fear. We've seen it before. We saw it with Brexit. And that's where their default line is, to scare us into submission, but lie to our faces, as they have done with COVID. Just sorry to end it on such a dull note with COVID, but Anthony Fauci this week has had to go in front of Congress and say, by the way, the rules on social distancing, I made them up.
Tell us who Anthony Fauci was, Alex.
Anthony Fauci was the chief medical officer in the United States who made all of the rules globally for COVID. He's the rules that he put forward are the rules that we've all followed. And he said masking for children was nonsense. Social distancing was nonsense. We've also found out that the lab in Wuhan, where we are 99% sure that the virus came from, was funded by his department. And look, these are the same people. They're all the same people who told you on Sky News, follow the science, and if you don't believe us, you'll be arrested, or you'll be put away, or you won't be allowed to have your freedom of speech. So if you can believe them on climate change, if you believe them on COVID, you believe them on climate change, then you'll believe them on anything. And that is unfortunately where the left are. You cannot trust these people.
Always Pooh says, Fauci said, I am the science. Which reminds me, actually, yes. I know, Alex, you're a big Star Wars fan, and we didn't talk about Star Wars, so we'll do that next week. But Palpatine, Emperor Palpatine says, I am the Senate. That's what Fauci reminds me of there, saying, I am the science. But actually, yes, Eunice, on that point, though, on Sky News, is this part of a wider... I mean, I don't know who's advising them on all of this. It must be that nutter Jim Dale, who appears on GB News every 2 minutes, saying, oh, the end is nigh, the end is nigh. This is part of an attempt, is it not, to terrify us into submission on net zero?
Exactly. It's all a globalist conspiracy theory. I feel like there was this guy, he was running for president against Clinton, Al Gore. He said
Yes, that's
something like,
right.
oh, by 2013, all the northern ice cubes would have melted and the sea, and 2013 was 12 years ago. That didn't happen. And look, I studied politics in university, and when I came out of university, I was so brainwashed by this left-wing and environmentalist ideology, and it took me like a few years as I worked in society and I became more and more capitalistic and right-wing. And because you go into the real world and you work and you realize that so many of the things that they teach you are actually wrong. And one thing is that you realize about the climate is that we had an ice age before. There was a
Yeah.
time 4,000 years ago that the earth temperatures were like almost 10 degrees warmer. There was a time that, earth was just a molten rock and there was no CO2 emissions. And again, all goes back to control. They try to spread fear through COVID-19, through the environmental hoax, through any other mean, just to be able to impose more control, just to be
Yeah.
able to impose electric cars, and have everyone have their COVID IDs. So, and it goes, I don't know if you read this book, George Orwell. We are going towards
Yeah.
an Orwellian society, a dystopian society where everything is controlled by the central government, and they use these things as a token of fear to be able to impose control.
And it's going to get 10 times worse under Sir Keir Starmer. That's why we
Yes.
need to unite the right. We need to stand against all of these ideas because this is what's coming down the tracks, folks. Thick and fast, thick and fast. Have you got what it takes to be a reasoned presenter? Well, send us a short clip of yourself to join@reasoned.uk and we might be seeing you on this very channel very soon indeed.